Oh, happy Monday, everyone. You're in great company. I'm Rae Bonney, and with you for the next hour. My show today, as always, is about people, recognising that it really is okay to not be okay. It's the 18th of December, and just 7 days until the red-suited man makes his way here from the North Pole. Ho, ho, ho. And for the naughty ones, it will be probably no. Returning for us. Great show. Just holding my guest there in a holding pattern. But she is returning for a second sitting here at the studios of 3WBC. And I'm doubly blessed to have winner of 2007 Australian Idol winner. Oh, she's a winner. Natalie Gauci.
Hi.
So, you're peaking. I think Scott Corman's listening going, Rae, her voice is peaking out. I have to turn you down a little bit. She's got a very, very strong projection in your voice.
Okay.
Probably why you won Australian Idol.
Probably.
And have continued to do so well ever since. But no, welcome back. Now, for those of you who don't know, Natalie, she became a household name back then and has recently returned to Australia, not as a comeback, but rather as a rebirthing. That's how you like to say it, don't you?
Yeah.
Now, we covered a lot last week, didn't we?
We did.
We did. Anyone that didn't tune in last week, you can hear it all again. Visit my YouTube page. That's Rae Bonney, RaeBonney, YouTube. And you'll find me with lots of other people as well, lots of other interviews that I've done. So last week we ended off when you had been married. You'd won Australian Idol, not in that order.
Yep.
Married one of Dicko's mates,
Yep.
as you do. Very idle. And then you reached a point in your life where things felt like they could be breaking.
Yeah.
And you experienced your first healing episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was just a thing. I was actually suffering from depression when I came back from my first trip. So I went to Berlin to Germany for 6 months, 6 to 7 months, and it was supposed
that was
to
after
be,
you won.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Was that part
yeah.
of the deal?
No.
Okay.
This is when I'd broken away. So
Yes.
I'd made the decision to cut the ties with the label, with the show, and it took about 18 months for me to do all of that. So in that time, I became a fitness trainer. I set up an electro pop band with a DJ producer called Paul Brandoli, and our group was called Tune in Tokyo.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, and we had songs on the ARIA charts, on the dance charts, and I did some club touring, and I wrote a song called Without You, which was about my divorce and my separation, and that ended up going to number 29 on the German dance charts.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and it opened doors for me because I thought, wow, I've got an in Europe. I think I'm just going to get my ticket and go. And because Dreamer from Tune in Tokyo got picked up by the winner of Spanish Pop Idol, it was released as a single and did really well. So I got royalties from that, and I ended up using that to go and have a trip.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was really good because I needed to get out of Australia.
It's funny when you refer to a dance track that was around your divorce. Like, dancing and divorce?
Without you, yes. No. So it was, I guess it's like anything. You can always find a positive in something that is, a struggle
Yes.
or a pain, and that's what I did at the time, because it was hard. It wasn't an easy road after everything, because what happened was I went to, so I had a dream.
Yep.
And the dream was about me being in all these desert countries like Egypt, and I think I was in the Middle East, and I was dressed up as this goddess, and I was traveling the world, and I was talking to a friend of mine who had just opened up a yoga house called Prana Yoga in, I think it's still there actually, in Northcote.
Yeah.
And she said to me, oh my God, Natalie, this is you. You have to go and live your dream. Like, go get out there and start traveling. And I'm like, yeah. I said, I really feel like this is my calling, And she said, well, why don't you come to the Prana Yoga house and have a meditation, come and see the healer.
Yeah.
We've just got a new healer on board. She does Reiki.
And not a blue healer or a red healer like you'd expect in Australia?
No, this is a Reiki healer. So I had no idea what Reiki was and I didn't really know what to expect. And so when I got
Were you
there,
dubious?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, I was searching for something.
Yeah.
I was looking for something else, because these dreams were too vivid. It was like they were past lives or I really felt connected to them. And I can explain the colours still now and the feeling, the senses. I can smell it. I can, I can feel the warmth and the heat of the summer. Like it felt so real.
Yeah.
And so when I went to see this lady, her name's Dana. She's a healer. She's still one of my healers now that I go and see. And she did a reading for me and I told her nothing. I told her.
Sorry, listeners. We're just distracted there by Ken Lyons again on our show, who just poked his tongue out through the window and just distracted us. So stay awake.
He looks happy. That's amazing.
Anyway, so Dana, the healer.
Yeah, so she did a reading for me and I didn't tell her anything. So I came in as totally blank and she picked up that I had a heavy right side of my body, which is connected to the male side. And she said that I was feeling a dominant weight of a male and masculine energy. She said either from your partner or your father. And I was like, whoa. I mean, for me, even that was just, I'm thinking, how does she know this? And then I started crying and the tears started to come and, all you have to do is open up that one little bit that you've been holding on to and then it just, the floodgates open. And then I laid down on this kind of like a massage table and she said, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to balance your energies. And she said, you've got energy centers in your body and I'm going to use my hands to balance you out. So she'll feel where there's unbalances and then she'll put me back together in a way.
Yep.
And when it was finished, we did the reading and there was one thing that stood out for me. And she said, nothing is what it seems. She's like, there's a lot here that you're yet to learn about this situation. And I know she was talking about Idol and I know she was talking about my relationship, my marriage.
Did she know that you were who you were?
No idea.
Okay.
I told her, my situation after we did the reading and through it because she was picking up on things. She was asking me, is this relevant to you?
Yes.
And it completely was.
Yeah. And
she said that my ex-husband and I made too many sacrifices for each other and there was a codependency there and, which was true.
Yeah, which you spoke about last week.
Yeah. And so she gave me these exercises to do, which were to do with my aura. So do you know what an aura is? So an aura is our energy field and we can see it sometimes on the outside of our body. It's like the outside of the skin.
A force field.
A force field, yeah. And it can be big or it can be small depending on how we control it or want it to be. And at the time, I didn't realize that I could actually, I could master this or I could try and master it in some way. Because she said my energy levels were really, really low. And it was I was very skinny. I wasn't eating much. I wasn't in a good way. And so she said to me to imagine a lotus flower and in my heart and imagine it spinning in a clockwise direction and the petals, to give myself love and then to release the petals as love to people and to things and then outside of the planet and then beyond the ethos and, just all these amazing visualizations and feelings, of love. And then she showed me that I could imagine colors in my body and expand them on the breath and then I can retract them. She said, so when I go into a space, if I want to be a bigger energy, I can imagine that color expanding to be a bigger energy. And then if I don't want to be seen in this environment, I can retract my energy and just be invisible for that moment. So it gave me power. It gave me a sense of
and control.
Because
after last week, what we were talking about, it sounds like you had lost all control.
Yeah.
Little bit by little bit, and then eventually recognizing, it's all about to go down.
Yeah.
If you don't gather it.
And it was actually like tears for 8 days. Like couldn't stop crying before I left the first trip.
Yeah.
So when I got back from Berlin was when I was ready to start my new journey.
Yep.
So that Berlin trip was more just fun, making music, learning
So the
logic.
experience that you had with Dana, the healer, before you went to Berlin, you kind of just kept that sort of to the side a little bit?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Because going to Berlin sounds like it was more than fun.
Yeah, it was soul searching. Yeah. So I was doing counselling for 6 months before that as well.
Yes.
And I realised through the counselling that I had a sex addiction and a drug addiction, and that I needed to start a journal and start writing about it. And I didn't heal myself in that 6 months. It was more just, a bit of a taster of what it actually, acknowledgement, Yeah. And then I just had to leave. Like I couldn't stay. I couldn't face it. I just couldn't.
Face what?
I couldn't face all this stuff that I was realizing, facing the fact that I had these addictions, that I had to deal with my marriage breaking up, So before I left, I went on a tour around Australia. I took my keyboard and I learned how to use Logic Pro, which is a music program on MacBooks.
Yeah.
So I started creating my own beats and all the music that I made when I was married, because I made this album that I wanted to get signed by another label. So I wanted to leave my label, create a new album, produce it myself, and then go and get signed. But it didn't end up being like that, because it was all false hope. It was all me living in an illusion, thinking that I was going to be able to do that in such a short period of time and form another relationship with a label. And, I was taking cocaine at the time. Like, even though I was getting out of it and becoming a fitness trainer, I still had that fantasy in my head, And my ex-husband had a lot to do with that, because he knew people in the industry and he honestly believed that he could help me get signed again. So we both had this in our head that it was going to happen. We were both going to move to London together. We were living in a dream fantasy.
But also
land.
looking for the fix as well.
Exactly.
Like, that'll fix it.
Exactly. Thinking, well, if this happens, it's going to fix this. Thinking of the future, not being present, not being consciously aware of what was actually really
It sounds
happening.
like an enormous amount of activity was being had, and going back to the addiction pieces, drugs and sex.
Yeah.
Were those things so integral in your life because they kept you up, or kept you that false energy going to get across everything?
I think it's a false belief of what love really is. Thinking that sex is love.
Yeah.
And thinking that going out and taking drugs and partying makes you happy.
Yes.
It doesn't.
No. I've never heard a really good story, a really good ending to that one.
Yeah.
But, at the time, I guess, an addiction is, quite impulsive, and it's not something that we can control. That's why it's addiction.
Yeah.
So when was the time that you recognised that you'd gone too far with that?
Well, it wasn't until my second trip back to Sweden.
Right.
That I had my last, what I've just learnt to be called an emergency. So I've been doing this shamanic healing course with my mentor and healer. His name is Paul Staten, and he's been such a great mentor to me at the moment. And through this course, I've now realised what happened to me back then.
Yeah, and you're doing a course with him.
Yes, I'm doing it. I've finished it, and now we're just keep learning,
Yeah.
And so I've realised now that what happened to me back then was my first real emergency, where it's life or death situation, and if you don't fix it, or find a solution, you're just gonna.
So what found you in Sweden?
So I went back to Germany. And I got a gig in Amsterdam as part of a ADE, which is like a dance music festival they have in Amsterdam. And I met this woman who was a music manager, and she lived in Sweden. Yeah. And she asked me to come to Sweden. She gave me a couple of weeks. I stayed with her, and she introduced me to, Britney Spears' producer, Lady Gaga's producers. It was awesome. I got to really work with some amazing amazing
Did you meet the
musicians there.
ladies themselves?
No, I
right.
didn't. But I really did get introduced to the music dance industry in Sweden, which is amazing. You know, it's really well connected to LA and, you know, and it still is. And so I got offered a deal with Warner Scandinavia, and everything was going so well. You know, we were so close to getting a hit on the radio in Europe.
When you say we?
Me and my manager.
Right, okay.
With Warner's. Mm-hmm. And so then she became greedy, and she wanted to go independently with her own label and then get Warner's to distribute only. So she wanted to take the record to the radio. She wanted to, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
Here we go.
Like,
Control taken away again.
Yes. And I became this puppet on a string. And she ended up dating this guy who had, you know, guns in the house, and his son was a drug dealer, and she was trying to get me to see him, and then I ended up falling for him, and then I ended up back on cocaine again, and it was just a downward spiral, and it was just history repeating itself.
Yeah.
And let's rewind, because I have a story to tell just before that.
Yeah,
so
sure.
When this was happening, just before that, or during this time actually, I went to Berlinale Film Festival because I'd made friends in Berlin, and I got basically a free ticket to go, and I was like, yeah, I'm in. Yeah. And when I was there, I was being overwhelmed with people wanting to just go out with me, take me on dates. They wanted to put me in their movies, and I'm just thinking, what is going on here? Like, I want to do music. I don't want to go on dates. I don't want to be in your movie.
Yes.
I want my music out, and I want people to hear my songs. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not being heard? Like, this is what was going on for me at that time. And I was in the shuttle bus.
Yeah.
And as I was sitting in the back seat, there was a full bus. Everybody came out. I was in La La Land, just sitting in the back. And then the bus driver came out, and it was a minibus, and he came out, he opened the door, and he said to me, would you like to come and sit in the front? And I thought, oh, it kind of put me back into the present moment, because I forgot, I didn't even realize that everybody was left the bus.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And I thought, well, that's unusual. I've never been asked to sit in the front seat like that. I thought, what a caring bus driver, right? And I look at him while he's driving, and he just had this aura and this glow around him like an angel. I could see this white glow, like a halo around him. And I said, are you just a bus driver? Because you don't seem like just a bus driver. Like, there must be something going on here, you know. And he said, oh, well, actually, I'm a spiritual healer.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. And you know what? I felt so relieved because I really needed help. And then he just turned around and he said, well, what would you like to ask me, darling? And I said, I just need to know.
He clearly spoke English.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He had a really nice German accent, and he was just he had a really attractive energy about him, you know, and he was probably, I'd say, in his late 50s maybe. And so anyway, so I asked him, I said, I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't get what my purpose is. I said, because I'm trying and I'm trying and I'm trying and nothing's working for me. And he said, there's only one thing in life that everybody wants. He said, what do you think that is? And I said, happiness? And he said, no, love. And I thought, oh, I knew that.
Of course. Love equals happiness.
Yeah.
Plus one.
Yeah. And then he stopped the bus. And it was like time went on pause. And it was like we just rose up into this different dimension. And I could see all these people.
Are you sure you hadn't been taking some drugs?
I knew you were going to say that. I was not on drugs. I didn't drink that trip.
Yeah.
It was like, I felt like it was real in my soul, you know, and I know the difference between having a drug-induced fantasy as opposed to what really feels real. Because, you know, when your heart is crying, you know it's real. Yeah. You know, when you really can connect and the tears start to flow, you feel the pain. That's reality, right? And there is a beauty in that, you know. And so he stopped the bus. We started to kind of run. It was like our energy was getting bigger.
Yeah.
That's how I can explain it. And I could see everybody. Like I could see people walking. And he's like, look at these people, he said. He said, we all are going through the same thing. And we're all here together. And we all want the same thing. And that is love. And he said, and we have a choice between right and wrong, yes and no, light and dark. And it's up to us to choose. But if we're covered in darkness, how do we know what to choose if we want to choose yes? He said we need to clear it out to become the light, basically. And I was just, and he's kept on saying to me, and this man, you know, he tells me, and this guy, he tells me, I call him, and I'm thinking, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And in the end, I said, look, can I have this guy's number?
Yeah.
I said, because I really need to call him myself. I need to talk to him. And he turned around to me and he said, oh, you can call him. I said, well, who is it? He said, oh, it's the Holy Spirit.
Oh.
And my first reaction was cringe city because I was brought up Catholic and I don't believe in religion and all this stuff. But I was so moved by that experience that he shifted an energy in me that I began to believe it. And I didn't worry about the religion behind it. I didn't worry about what I'd been conditioned by. And he gave me an exercise to do which helped me transmutate the energy through breathing and visualizations.
Wow.
Yeah, and I started to do it. And within 3 months, I got myself out of the drugs and out of everything for the rest of my life. I didn't touch it again after that. And I moved to London. So I had 2 setbacks within that time.
Yeah.
But the last one was it. And that was when I got to London and my ex-partner at the time who I was seeing like for a little while in Sweden, I found out he was a drug smuggler. And then he wanted to come and live with me in London and I'm just like, no way. I gave him one more chance. I thought, well, if he wants to change, he will. And if he doesn't now, I'm out. And that was it. Because I gave him so many opportunities, you know.
You wanted to believe it.
Yeah. And I loved him, you know. I really cared about him. So anyway, he couldn't do it. And I had my very last emergency was when I tried crack cocaine for the first time. And I felt like very suicidal.
Yes. And
really horrible about myself. And it was the last straw for me. And that's when I decided that I was never going to do it again.
This was before the bus driver?
This was after.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just kept on doing what he showed me to do. And he emailed me because I got in touch with him and kept in contact with him.
Okay.
And he said to me, my sources are telling me you need to leave Sweden because you're not the little girl anymore. You don't need to be a puppet in your life anymore. You need to start to take control of your life and be a woman, like grow into the woman that you are. And to me, that was be the songwriter, be an artist, like a true artist to who I really am as a person and live that life by example.
It's funny. It sounds like you've done like from, you know, the Australian Idol days, you've done a whole full circle and arrived back at the same point of I want to be an artist. I want to get my music out. But you had to go on that whole amazing circus of events to get yourself into that, you know, to be a woman in that space.
Well, yeah. And if you can't, for me, I can't do music if I'm not whole as a person because then I'm not vibrating on the same vibration, like sound as my music is.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the more I get to know you, we have these chats in the car and, you know, you tell me all these things, like these mechanical things about putting music together.
Yeah.
And how you need to be so present and it's such a part of you that eventually gets produced into something really tangible, which I find really interesting.
And do you know what he said to me, the bus driver? He said, stop thinking about the tangible.
Yes.
So that's what because I was always looking for proof for everything.
Well, you would see an outcome rather than how do you get there. Now, I know everyone's listening and thinking, what happened to the bus driver? When was the last time you're in contact?
Well, that was the last time I spoke to him time. Maybe it's time for me to find him and tell him
Imagine if he was listening in.
Oh, my God.
The universe has very funny ways of connecting us. Now, we are going to go to a break, but before we do, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you're going to perform for us live in the studio.
Oh, okay. Well, moving into 2017, I have just started my own healing business, which is called Natalie Gauci, A Guide to Happiness. And I've been, part of my meditations and healing myself is to practice chanting and mantra meditations. And chants and mantra meditations are basically sacred sounds that were created in the ancient times in the Eastern world. So India, Tibet, Nepal. Those kind of countries.
Yes. I've been to Nepal.
Buddhism comes from there. There's about 17 different types of chants.
Yeah.
Or maybe more, you know, and there's lots of monks that create their own, and there's a few that I resonate quite strongly with at the moment. And I started off with a Japanese one called Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And then I've moved into more of the Sanskrit, which is more Indian.
Yes.
And there's, you know, Om Namashivaya, which is a really beautiful one. So maybe I'll do that one.
Well, do I need to give you an intro?
Well, do you want me to do it right now?
Absolutely.
Okay,
and maybe when you're finished, we'll go straight to one of your songs off your new album as well. And we can talk about that when we come back. So I'll count you in that. One, two, 1, 2, 3, go.
Oh, before I start, I just like to explain Om Namah Shivaya it's devoting an adoration to the Guru in us. So bowing down to our own Guru in us and honouring ourselves. Okay, so while I'm singing, I want you to think about that, okay, and feel it, you know. Okay. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Satchidananda Murtaye Nishprabhanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Dejase Om Namah Shivaya Om Namah Shivaya Om Namah Shivaya Shivaya Om Namah Shivaya Om Namah Shivaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Oh, there you have it. That was Natalie Gauci and her song
Big Dream.
And that was a big song by a very little girl. Now, the mantra, I think for anyone that's been listening into the show, gave me shivers up my spine. Amazing, Natalie.
Thank you.
And very inspiring as well. I don't think I could probably pull off something like that in my living room at home. But
well, can I add to that?
Yes.
Because actually your own voice and your own vibration is the most healing thing that you can do for your body. So for me, singing it to you, you still get it.
Yes.
But for you doing it yourself, you get more benefits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's inner as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
So anyone could do it. You'll end up loving it. Yeah.
Well, now another special guest has just snuck into the studios, and he's special in more ways than one. Number one, because I made him myself, and number two, because he's a bit of talent also. Welcome to the show, Rory.
Hi.
You've not been on for a little while, have you?
Yeah.
Well, last week you were listening into my show, and I had Natalie on last week, and we were playing a song in our car, weren't we?
Yeah.
Do you remember what that song is called?
No.
Ha, ha, ha. Remember? Yeah. Anyway, that song, Ha, 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 had a little story attached to it about funny faces in biscuits that you get from the bakery. And you liked that, but you even liked the song even more. And you did say to me, Mum, that's probably one of my favourite songs in the whole wide world.
Wow.
And what a compliment.
Oh, that means a lot to me,
So he said to me, now I'm hopefully the government's not listening about truancy, but he did decide to wag school today in order to spend a bit of the show with you. So he's got some questions that he thought up all by himself that he'd like to ask you.
What's your favourite song that you created?
Whew. Well, this is a very, very, very difficult question. I'm going to answer with a song that I've always felt very, very attached to, which you probably, I don't know if you've heard yet, but maybe I can play it to you later. It's called Free Falling. And it's off my first album that I wrote while I was in Australia and produced it and really wanted it as my first single when I was signed to my label the first time. And they wouldn't let me do it.
They wouldn't let you do it?
No.
But I don't like these people at all. I'm never going to apply for Australian Idol. Nothing to do with my voice.
The Australian Idol bit was fine. It was just that, the songwriting bit. But yeah, so Free Falling is still my best favourite ever song.
Well, we will look that up and we will play that because you are coming back on the show.
Yeah.
So we'll play that during another one in January. Rory, you had another one.
What's your favourite song that's not yours?
Of all time.
Yeah.
Wow. This is a tough one.
So many to choose from.
The first song that comes to my mind is Faith by George Michael.
Oh, well, put up your hand if you're not a George Michael fan. I mean, if you are.
Do you know George Michael, Rory?
Yes.
Wow.
Loves George Michael. In fact, when Rory was born, I remember him sitting on my knee and I got George Michael up on the Googles.
Did you?
Yeah, and I said, you've got to listen to this.
What song did you play?
It was Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me with
awesome.
Mr. Elton John.
Amazing.
That is the one. That's the song. So, but we love George Michael and we were very sad when he passed away.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So that's it. That's the song.
Yeah, there you go. That's great. What about the third question that you have?
How old were you when you started singing?
Well, I started using a microphone and making noises when I was 3.
You didn't use the hairbrush?
No, because my parents bought this camera like back in the 80s. Like I was born in 81, so it would have been 84. And they had these microphones attached to the cameras. Do you remember those?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that's the only way you could really talk into it. That's how you get audio into it. So you had to pass the microphone around. This is how much technology's advanced, Rory. So, yeah. So basically, I grabbed a microphone and I would just make sounds, talk into it, and didn't want to let it go. And that was my initial like introduction to singing and using my voice. And then I started singing professionally when I was 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't get any lessons up until then?
No. Oh, I did, but they were more for my schooling because I got a scholarship into VCA and I did trumpet and piano and singing.
That's the Victorian College of the Arts, for those who don't know.
Yeah, so they have a secondary school there. And I got a scholarship to go there, and that's when I started to really hone the singing. But it wasn't until I was 17 that I, got paid to sing and become professional, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
You never know what talent lies within.
I know, right?
Yeah. And imagine if you'd never discovered that. But with a voice like yours, even when you're speaking, it sounds amazing. So
thank you.
somebody would have picked it up eventually.
Oh,
for sure.
thank you. That's nice.
Now, we just did hear a song off the new album, which has not been released yet. Well, it has been, but not really.
This album?
Yes.
Yeah, so I released it.
What's it called?
It's called Pictures of Mars.
Are they, no, do you think they're real, those pictures of Mars? Do you think it really exists?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Why pictures of Mars?
Pictures of Mars is a representation of me wanting to wonder what it's like having like life on another planet, going elsewhere, thinking about the extraordinary. Like, you know, I know that there's life beyond our planet. And I was always wondering what it would be like to not be in this body and, you know, somewhere else. And I wrote Pictures of Mars when I was wanting a big change in my life.
So it's your very high level running away from home.
Oh, yeah. It's the closest you can get to going away when you're stuck somewhere.
No, we all have pictures in our mind, and we're partly seduced by what we see on the screen.
Yeah.
But when we think about other life, do you have a picture in your mind of what that looks like?
I just imagine myself as an astronaut. I can't imagine myself as an alien for some reason.
Yeah.
I can just imagine myself as an astronaut, like jumping around from the moon to Mars or something like that. Yeah.
With your rubber band.
Yeah. And just seeing things that I've not seen before. Yeah.
It's funny when you talk about energy like you were before around auras, we don't always have to see the tangible thing, do we? And we were also talking before about, you know, the tangible music production that starts out with something that's really just energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were telling me when we were in the car talking about how you put this album together. I said, well, how long did that take you to write? And you said, 2 years or whatever it was. But, you know, that whole getting inside of yourself to get the stuff out, you said was a bit of a struggle. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, Big Dream comes to mind, one we've just listened to. And that came about after I got my first job in London. So I'd just come out of this black hole and within 24 hours found myself a job, you know, teaching, telling my story and not realizing that was going to be my first job in London.
Wow.
You know. So there's a company called APRA, which is the Australian Publishing Rights Association, and they have an office in London. And when I was in Sweden, I had been mentoring a friend from Australia who came to Sweden to see me before I left. And I told him my struggles, and he said, you need to meet this woman from APRA. And just by coincidence, there was a meeting for this networking event the day I arrived, the second day after I arrived. So I had just a backpack, just my clothes I had on me, not much money by that stage, and really just I had hope. You know, I'd actually not had any tangibles left. I had to go on trust in God, in my higher self, in whatever you want to call it.
The
right?
universe.
The universe. Yeah. And so I went to this meeting and I met this man in the lift. And I just got this feeling in my intuition that this man is going to, I got a message, this man is going to give me my job.
What's it with you and men in vehicles? Like if it's not a bus, it's a lift.
I know.
You know?
I know. It still happens now. And so anyway, we started talking and he's obviously Australian because everybody there is Australian living in London who got to do with music industry. And I told him a bit of my story and he said, can you please send me your new music and, you know, a bit of Australian Idol? He said, I'd love for you to come in and talk to my kids. So I did. And pretty much the next day he replied. Within 3 or 4 days, I was in this class of a bunch of year 7 children. Their eyes were just open. He must have told them a little bit about me because as soon as I walked in, you could hear a pin drop. It was just quiet. And their eyes were like open. And on the back of the room, it said, achieve your dreams, you know. And I thought, wow, this is like the best classroom ever. I wish I went to a school like this, you know. And I told my story, I performed, and it was the first time I'd ever opened up about anything. So it had been nearly 3 years. Yeah. And I'd held this story in.
Did you have to edit bits out because they're only in year 7?
Well, obviously.
Messages, do not take drugs.
Yeah. Well, it was more about the thing I learnt from that talk was that I wanted the kids to learn what their true purpose is without being conditioned by things on the external. So I wanted them to find out what they really love and to follow their passions. So that was my message that day to them. And I got on the tube, as you do, back home, and these words just started to come to me. Like, I never knew old people could be friends with young people. And it was because these young kids who were just 12, they really connected with me. And the head teacher would have been in his 60s, and I connected with him. He connected with the kids, and it didn't matter what age it was. It was just that feeling and that emotion was so cathartic and just so, it really shifted something in that space, and we all could feel it. And it was so magical, and it was so inspiring that I just thought, gosh, how naive was I, to think that I could do all these things in a year, Like, big dreams take lifetimes to achieve. When they're big dreams, it's a big energy.
But even the word achievement or success, how we define it in ourselves is all very unique, isn't it? And I never like to think that I've achieved something or I've been successful doing something, because there's so much more to have, in the same thing. You might have a sense of, fulfillment at the moment, but, you look back on things and you go, oh, what was I doing this time last year? I go, oh, that was a bit embarrassing.
And how we learn from it as well, it's true. And so when I got to the point where I'd finished the song, I needed to raise the money to record it, because I had this, whatever you heard just then. Yes, I heard that exact thing in my head.
In your head,
that's what I heard. How do you get that into a tangible product?
Well, this is where you learned your Adobe. Is it Adobe?
Logic,
yes.
So I didn't do this one in Logic, actually. Yeah. What I did was, I kind of did. I recorded the piano part. Yes. And the vocal part in Logic, because it's got different rhythms to each section. So it's like the time signature is the same and the tempo is the same, but it swings. So it goes like da 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 da. So I'm like, how do I do this? How am I going to tell musicians to? Yeah. And where am I going to find the musicians? And where am I going to find a producer? And where am I going to find the money
to buy them? Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, it was just all too hard. But 2 years later, I managed to create it and record it and produce it, and it was a fight, because there was so much resistance in getting this song produced. Because I changed my name, by default at this stage
to Nellie
Bell, and that's a whole nother story.
Yes,
and then I raised £50,000 to record an album.
How did you do that?
Well, I moved to Hackney, which is in East London, and one of my housemates worked at a music studio in the cafe. And she just happened to tell me during breakfast, and she's like, oh, no, it's nothing. It's just a cafe, la, la, la.
Is she from India?
She's do I sound Indian? It's supposed to be Italian. Oh, my gosh. That's terrible.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Stick to your singing.
All right, yeah. I'll work on my accents. Okay. So anyway, she told me that she worked in this cafe. Anyway, I Googled the studio, and there was like people like Emily Sandé, Michael Bublé, all these famous people who were going there to record and to rehearse. And I thought, oh my God, this is literally 5 minutes around the corner from where I live. Yeah. How did I not see this? So I was doing live videos on YouTube. As Nellie Bell at the time. So I sent him one and I said, can I please do a live piano session in your studio? And it just so happened that the owner was turning 70, and he asked me if I wanted to sing at his birthday party. So I did. And there was like encore after encore. There were like hundreds of people there. And he just said to me, I don't know where you've come from, but I really want to help you do your music. So he came up with this business plan where I would assign all my rights to my music into a company called Nellie Bell Limited. Yep. I strongly advise any artist that's listening not to do that. Okay, because then it's not yours anymore. It's not your intellectual property. Right. So for anyone who is running a business, always keep your intellectual property, because that is where you make your money, and that is yours. I mean, that's, you know, it's part of your soul, really, of your business.
Yeah. So what happened to yours then? It was...
So it's dissolved now
Yes.
after like 3 years, and it was really a big mess. So I had to work on getting that, you know, but I did have support at the time, and I did have people who were genuine, but also talking about emotional energy and people wanting to take your power.
Yes.
That started to happen again.
Yeah. So you managed to keep yourself afloat.
I did, yeah, because I started to learn how to manifest things through mind mapping.
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard of mind mapping is where you write something down and you write a word, and then you choose like 5 words from that. So, and then you branch out 5 words from that, and you start to create something. So I started to create brand sponsorships.
Yeah.
And I started to do sponsorship deals to keep myself alive financially through this process, because I had lessons to learn still. And now I completely forget what we were talking about. Oh, yeah, big dream.
Big
So
Dream.
when
Yes.
I got into the studio and had the finance and everything to work on Big Dream,
Yeah.
we raised the money to create the drums. The horns were recorded in Venezuela and then brought back. I had to really negotiate with the budget because we only had like £800 to record that song.
Yeah.
And in the end, after 6 months, we did it. You know, 6 months to do the music, but a year before that to raise the money.
Wow. That's dedication, Nat.
Yeah, I know.
That is, did you, like, by the time the finished product came along, did you make any alterations or changes to the original bit, if you could have recorded it then and there?
I did, yeah. I made about 3 different alterations to the horns.
Yeah.
And I re-recorded the vocals, and the last alteration was in January because I had one lyric that I sang wrong, so I had to change that. And we just remixed the whole track in January to get it sounding how I wanted it to sound.
Well, I love that song straight away. I've listened to it twice now, just today.
Yeah.
And so far, it's my favourite.
Thank
but,
you.
We've reached the end again
Wow.
of the show. It goes so fast, so lightning fast. Now, I just want to remind people listening into my show, sometimes we can speak about topics that cause people to have some heightened feelings. So if you do feel like you need some extra support, don't forget Lifeline. That's 131114. The suicide callback service is 1300 659 467, and of course emergency services 000. You've been listening to Rae Bonney, where it really is okay to not be okay, reminding everyone also that Christmas is not always a great time for people. You know, maybe a smile, a gesture, anything. You've got no idea how that's going to impact somebody. So, but we'll be back next week. I think the last show before Christmas. No, in fact, this is the last show.
it?
Yeah, this is the last show
wow,
before
okay.
Christmas. So everyone do have a wonderful, wonderful, silly season. And I'll be right back here, I think, around the 8th of January, I think, will be the next show. Oh, no, there might be another one. Anyway, I'll look that up. Thank you, Natalie, for coming on the show again.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Rory.
Thank you, Rory.
Thank you. It was fabulous to have you on as well. Do you have any parting Christmas message for people?
Not yet.
Fair enough. Now, Nat, we've got one more song to go out with Alive.
Yeah.
Do you want to intro that?
This song is called Alive, and I'd like to dedicate this to my grandpa, who's now passed on into the spirit world. I wrote this song the day that he passed on.
Well, there you go. What a
Yeah.
beautiful sentiment. Take care, everyone.